Hi guys, good morning. So today in our video, we're going to do a couple things. We are going to fill in the blanks for Act 3. We are going to review Springboard page 402. We're just going to look at these two questions, 1 and 2. And also, we're going to talk about journal number 6. Okay, so we're going to do this first. So I know you were meant to actually fill in the blanks for Act 3 plot yesterday, but I thought I'd just go through and make sure everyone's on the same page. So to be clear, because we're keeping track of days in the play, all of Act 1, this part of Act 2, all happens in day 1 of the play. So Romeo's in love with Rosaline, he meets Juliet, they fall in love at first sight, they have the balcony scene, they plan to get married. The very next day, Romeo and Juliet get married, and then Mercutio and Benvolio encounter Tybalt and a group of Capulets in the streets. Romeo appears but refuses to fight Tybalt, claiming to love the Capulet family. So instead, Mercutio fights Tybalt. Romeo tries to stop the fight and accidentally causes Mercutio's death at the hands of Tybalt. Romeo then fights and kills Tybalt in his anger. Okay, so remember, this is all still day 2. Right, going to the back. Still day 2. All right. The nurse, now this is the part where I just had you guys watch the summary videos yesterday. So we didn't actually read this bit. But basically, Juliet cries to the nurse, Romeo cries to the friar, everybody cries, so we skipped that bit. But the nurse brings Juliet news that Romeo killed Tybalt. Juliet begs her nurse to find Romeo and tell him to come to her room that night to consummate the marriage. Friar Lawrence advises Romeo to spend the night with Juliet and then flee to Mantua. When enough time has passed, they plan to reveal their marriage to their families and beg for the prince's forgiveness. And I think this is important to mention here because usually we do talk about this in class, but the reason it seems like a lot of people in the play are so insistent that Romeo spend the night with Juliet instead of just running away and trying to save his life is because back then, if you did not consummate the marriage, your marriage would not necessarily be considered legal. So in order for them to have like a legally binding and recognized marriage, Romeo actually kind of had to spend the night with her. And, you know, they want their marriage to be legal. So that's why that was important. So in the meantime, while all this is happening, Lord Capulet decides Juliet will marry Paris. Romeo and Juliet wake up. This is where we start reading. So this was day 2. So when Romeo and Juliet wake up, this is where day 3 starts, okay? So Romeo and Juliet wake up, but are not able to spend any time together since Romeo must flee Verona, that's the city they're in, remember, to save his life. So the whole play takes place in Verona. This place, Mantua, is like the next city over. Juliet's mother visits her and reveals that she is to marry Paris. in 3 days. Obviously, this is a problem because she's already married. Juliet's nurse advises Juliet to forget Romeo and marry Paris. Juliet decides not to trust her nurse anymore and goes to see Friar Lawrence. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw this guy in here. So all this is going to take place on day 3 of our play. Okay. All right, so that was Act 3. We're going to worry about Act 4 and 5 after break. So let me put this away real quick. And now let's turn our attention to Springboard. It's page 402, just to do 2 of their activities. Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to zoom in correctly. Here we go. So the cost of advice. We're just going to take a couple minutes here to reflect on how this scene affects Juliet and how it affects the action in the play. So they give you an example here with the first one with her father, but then we're going to think about her mother and the nurse too. So let's read this. Part of the process of coming of age is learning and accepting that sometimes parents and other trusted adults make mistakes. Complete the following graphic organizer to identify how the adults in Juliet's life are making mistakes that contribute to her frustration by the end of Act 3. So here's her father's mistake, right? So it's his decision or his advice, but we know it's not a good decision, right? Not good advice. Juliet's father threatens to disown her if she refuses to marry Paris. He actually tells her that she can just beg, steal, starve, or die in the streets if she refuses. So the effect on Juliet is that she has the impossible choice of breaking her wedding vows or losing her family and starving to death on the streets. Okay, remember, she's only a 13-year-old girl with no money. So if her father throws her out of the house, she doesn't have anywhere to go. And I know everyone always says she can go live with Romeo, but Romeo is also only like a 16-year-old teenage boy who's now been banished from his family and from the city. So it's not really the beginning of a great life there. All right, Juliet's mother. What does Juliet's mother decide or advise to Juliet? Well, if we look back in the story, and this part always makes me so sad, because after the huge fight with her father, where this is the part I just quoted, right? So, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. I'll never acknowledge thee. So her father literally says that to her and then walks out. Then Juliet kind of begs her mother, "Oh, sweet my mother, cast me not away. Delay this marriage for a month, a week. If you do not, make the bridal bed in the dim monument where Tybalt lies." So she's saying, if you can't delay this marriage, you might as well just make my wedding day my funeral. And then Lady Capulet responds by saying, "Talk not to me, for I'll not speak a word. Do as you will, for I have done with thee." So just completely shuts down Juliet, says, "Don't talk to me anymore. I have nothing to say to you. Do whatever you want because I'm done with you." Says that to her daughter and then leaves. So if we're filling out our chart, Juliet's mother says, I'm going to say, also disowns Juliet while siding with her husband. So, what's the effect that this has on Juliet? Well, she's still left with this same choice, but now she feels she has no support from her family, right? She now feels completely isolated. Okay, so who is the only person that she still trusts? Well, Romeo, right? But the nurse, that's like her best friend. So then, what does the nurse do in this scene? She suggests, right, or advises. So the nurse advises, and we just filled this out on the summary chart, but she advises Juliet to forget Romeo and marry Paris. So she tells Juliet, just pretend you're not married to Romeo. Just pretend it never happened. Don't tell anyone and marry Paris instead. So obviously our effect on Juliet, she already felt isolated. Now she feels even more isolated, and she loses her trust in the nurse. Okay, so this used to be like her most trusted friend, and now she just can't trust her anymore. So this activity here, you know, I'm actually thinking I might save this because the subtext that we're going to talk about actually will kind of help us when we read the very next scene, which is Act 4, Scene 1. So this might actually be a good activity to do before we go ahead and read that scene. So we'll save this one, okay? Let's keep it circled, but we don't have to fill anything out yet. And so lastly, I just really want you guys to put yourself in Juliet's shoes. So our journal number 6, which this was in the PowerPoint too, but just in case you wanted to see it, I really want you guys to think about, can you relate to Juliet in this scene? Have you ever felt misunderstood by your parents? How would this scene be different if Juliet told her parents the truth? And obviously when I say the truth, I mean her marriage, right, to Romeo. I mean, how would that scene be different? How would that have affected the play? Do you think that would change her dad's decision? I mean, her dad wants her to marry Paris, but if she's already married, he can't really enforce that. Do you think he would still throw her out into the street? I don't know. So I want you guys to first make a connection to Juliet. Tell me if you can relate to her, and if you can relate, like, have you ever felt this way? Maybe what happened when you felt this way? And then think about how this scene would be different if Juliet had told her parents the truth right then and there. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I do want to just tell you that I have been having an awesome time so far making these videos, and I just really hope that they have been helpful to you, and because obviously that's the whole point of them. And just want to send you a quick little message. Yay. So, yay, that's all Romeo and Juliet for today. Have a great break. Woohoo. Okay, bye-bye.